Joining us now is Michael Oren. He served as Israel's ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask you first of all about this blast at the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza. That's Gaza's largest refugee camp. An IDF spokesperson just a little while ago confirmed to us here on CNN that it was an Israeli airstrike that caused this. He said Israel hit the camp as it was targeting a senior Hamas commander. There's likely, as you well know, going to be huge worldwide backlash against Israel as a result of this because of the dozens of civilians who were killed in the process. How do you see Israel responding to this on a diplomatic level?
Well, first of all, good to be with you, and it's not good to hear about this. No one wants to hear, wants to see innocent Palestinians hurt, suffering, killed, certainly. But the army is going to respond the way it always has responded. The state of Israel is going to respond the way it always has. It says these deaths are certainly tragic, but they're not the fault of Israel. Israel has asked and urged the civilian population to leave that area, to flee to the south, away from the battle area. We've had reports of Hamas preventing the flight of civilians to safety, often at gunpoint. It's keeping great numbers of Palestinian civilians at the hospitals, and under those hospitals, there are the headquarters of Hamas. And so these citizens should not have been there. And if they're there and they're around the headquarters of a Hamas base, then the responsibility for those deaths lies solely with Hamas.
But if that senior Hamas commander, Ambassador, was there in the midst of this heavily populated refugee camp, the largest Palestinian refugee camp, the Jabalia refugee camp in Gaza, even if he was there, is it wise for the Israelis to go after this individual, knowing that in the process, dozens of innocent Palestinians, men, women, and children, would be killed?
Listen, I don't have all the details of this. Nobody does. I was just trying to look at some of the statistics about the number of people that were reportedly hurt or killed, and they vary widely according to numerous sources, whether you're looking at Arab sources or Western sources. But having said that, we also don't know whether this commander was alone or was in a command center. And if it's a command center that is directing Hamas terrorists to shoot at our troops and kill our troops, then the Israeli generals, the Israeli commanders, probably had very little choice but to make that call.
Let me move on to another sensitive issue. Earlier today, the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken gave senators in Washington an update on the hundreds of Americans who are still trapped in Gaza right now. I want to play this clip. Listen to this.
We have about 400 American citizens and their family members, so it's roughly 1,000 people who are stuck in Gaza and want to get out. I'm focused on this intensely. My entire department is as well, both in the region and here. We're working with various parties to try to facilitate their departure from Gaza. The impediment is simple. It's Hamas. We've not yet found a way to get them out through whatever place and by whatever means that Hamas is not blocking. But we're working that with intermediaries.
Ambassador, what measures are not being done that should be done to try to get those U.S. citizens, those Americans, out of Gaza right now?
Well, I think, first of all, before answering that, it bears saying, why is Hamas being the pediment? It's for the same reason Hamas is keeping civilians around its headquarters in Jabalia refugee camp. They're human shields. So Hamas realizes that having American citizens in Gaza is a great human shield. And what Hamas wants is for the United States to declare a ceasefire, try to impose a ceasefire, because a ceasefire simply means that Hamas wins the war and basically Israel dies. We won't be able to restore our security in any way. So they're in many ways the ultimate human shields. The hostages are human shields as well. So it'd be the best route that the United States can do, and I think it's probably above my pay grade to give advice at this stage to Secretary of State Blinken, would be to put immense pressure on Qatar and say, Qatar is, a funder and backer of Hamas. Many Hamas senior commanders live in Qatar. The United States has influence over Qatar, has a huge naval base there, and great educational and business interests. Say to the Qataris, we want these Americans out, or there's going to be consequences for our relationship.
Is there anything realistic that Israel could do to help get these, let's say, 1,000 Americans out of Gaza? Could Could Israel, for example, open up a border crossing and allow them to come into Israel and then come back to the United States from Israel?
It's a very good question. It's a hard one because for about a year and a half during my time in government, I was in charge of Gaza, and I was in charge of the border crossings. One of them during my time was knocked out, Kisufim. Another border crossing, Erez, has been knocked out by Hamas during this fighting. And the biggest border crossing is the ironically named Vineyard of Peace, Kerem Shalom, which was shelled and taken over by Hamas terrorists. So even physically, I don't know how this could be done on our side of the border. Obviously, the only place it could be done would be on the Egyptian crossing at Rafah. And I think the Egyptians, I can't understand why the Egyptians would not want to coordinate with the United States on this. They're very sensitive about letting Palestinians, even one Palestinian, into Sinai. But certainly the United States has leverage over Egypt as well. With us, it's not a matter of leverage. With us, it's a matter of simply there's no place to cross. And you can't ask Israelis to go down and risk their lives under fire to try to reopen one of those border crossings.
Ambassador Michael Oren, thanks as usual for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.